Having a relationship with your local bank, having access to banking services, having banking advice is part of the process of managing business, or at least it always had been in the UK, and in the last 20 odd years that has been eroded. The brewing storm in British high street banking now is the potential exit of Santander from the UK, and the Spanish banking giant, which once revitalised our financial sector by acquiring the Abbey National, now is considering pulling out, leaving 14 million customers and 20,000 employees in uncertainty. This story is more than just another business headline. It's a tale of regulatory burdens, short-sighted governance, and a failure to adapt by successive governments. It's not about this isn't about looking around to identify causation, to see which government was responsible for the destruction of the banking system, of the high street banking system across Britain. And it's definitely there. There's no question about it. I moved to a town in the Midlands, Rugby, and I moved here mostly because I liked a particular cafe. The day I moved, that cafe closed, and all the banks that I have ever belonged to have closed progressively in the town since I've been here, and I've not been here for much more than 7 or 8 years. And I went to get some advice about how to use the app on the Barclays bank system on the end of last week, and found that was closed as well. It's only closed until April, but there was no warning, there was no information, and you know, a long walk into town for no purpose to discover that the bank that I was going to was closed. It's not about whether or not it might be opening in April. That would be too late. It's about whether it's reliable, and it's not reliable. Banking in Britain is not reliable. And the rot, I would argue, is not about did it start yesterday, but about whether or not any governments have made any efforts to stop it. And they haven't, not the Conservative government nor the present Labour government. It can be traced back, maybe, to Blair's overconfidence in deregulated banking, to Cameron and Osborne's austerity-driven detachment from strategic economic stewardship, and a failure to prioritise sustainable growth. But Labour's red tape in recent months might be seen as an immediate cause of Santander's frustration. Let's not forget that it was the 2008 crisis, born of unchecked financial recklessness, that necessitated these regulations in the first place. But, that's 2008 is a long time ago, and we should be dealing with the reality today, not the reality yesterday. Santander's frustration centres on regulatory measures like ring fencing, which require the separation of high street operations from speculative investment banking. These rules, introduced after the crisis, aimed to safeguard everyday banking customers. People who might want to use the Bank of Dave, for example. You can only use the Bank of Dave, really, if you're signed up to Netflix. But for banks like Santander, they also increased operational costs and diminished profitability in the UK market compared to more lucrative territories like the US and Spain. And recent losses, including the £295 million provision for car finance mis-selling, coupled with stagnant profits, have made Santander question its UK commitment. Santander isn't alone, of course. Many people are questioning their UK commitment. There will be, I think, before the end of this year, a flood of exiles from the UK. Anna Botin, the executive chair, has emphasised focusing on growth markets, and the UK's high-cost, low-return environment seems increasingly unappealing. Santander's exit would deal a symbolic and practical blow to Britain's financial sector. Practically, it would disrupt millions of customers and thousands of jobs, not to mention £200 billion in customer loans. Symbiotically, or symbolically, it would underscore Britain's waning appeal as a hub of international finance. If Santander leaves, it sends a chilling message that Britain is no longer worth the regulatory and the economic headache. Britain is no longer open for business. And successive governments, both Conservative and Labour, share blame for this state of affairs. Cameron's government tightened the fiscal belt without addressing long-term economic growth, while Labour under Rachel Reeves faces criticism for excessive red tape. Reeves' call for tearing down regulatory barriers sounds promising, yet they fail to reconcile the delicate balance between protecting customers and enticing businesses. While regulations may seem cumbersome, they were enacted for a reason, to prevent another financial catastrophe. But tearing them down is necessary to ensure that there is finance here. We can erect so many barriers to protect us, but in the end, we isolate ourselves. The government needs to act decisively and fast. First, regulators should collaborate with banks to streamline compliance while maintaining some protection. Second, ministers must champion Britain as a competitive market through targeted initiatives and economic reforms. And third, it's imperative to stabilise high street banking, a senior critical issue that, if it's not got right, our high streets are going to die. Our high streets are already dying. The banks and the post office, there's a few things left remaining. The post office scandal will probably kill off the remaining post offices, and this banking crisis will kill off the remaining banks. That's our high street gone. It's a sector critical to national economic health, but it's a sector critical to the survival of our towns and our cities. Santander's potential departure is not just a Spanish decision. It reflects the UK's broader challenges in retaining business confidence in an uncertain climate. And there's a sort of symbiotic relationship between banks and businesses and and local towns. Break that relationship, and you break the system that underpins our national structure as it was re-envisaged after the Enclosures Act in the early part of the 19th century. We have an economy and a system which is basically urban, and we are now fracturing that with a dependence on apps, this sort of rubbish, and those apps fail, and those apps are not human. And in fact, even when you go into a bank now, where you've got a real bank, you are sort of directed towards an app. If you don't have an app directly on your phone, you're sent into a little room with a phone, and you wait to talk to the phone. The banking died a while ago, and it's disappointing and depressing that our governments have not recognised this issue. We need to ensure that that our banking continues in some form, and Santander's departure is something that we should regret. If we don't learn from this, we risk more banks following Santander's decision, Santander's initiative, leaving the high streets barren and trust eroded. And we must question ourselves. We must ask whether or not Santander should stay, but more importantly, whether we as a nation are prepared to fix the issues of the system that make working in Britain so unattractive. We need to ensure that we're not sleepwalking into yet another crisis which will take decades to repair. This isn't a crisis specifically about Brexit. It's a crisis about shuttering down opportunity, represented by one shuttered bank branch at a time.